Hey, hello guys, welcome to IQCIVILS IAS Academy, a great coach transforms life. So today we are going to discuss about IPCC 6th assessment report. This topic will be covered by me, Dr. Sachin Kadam, faculty at IQCIVILS IAS Academy, Guwahati. Guys, from today onward, I am coming up with a regular videos from science and technology and environment and ecology, and all these videos are going to help you a lot in your prelims 2023 examination of UPSC. So let's start. This is about IQ Civil Science Academy. We are starting our new batches for the UPSC and state PSC for 2024. Admissions are open and these batches will start from April and May. We IQ Civil Science Academy, we are running many interesting and many useful programs for the students of Assam in collaboration with Assam Administrative Staff College, which helps students from poorer background to prepare for UPSC and APSC examination. This is the Google review given by the students to our academy, IQ Civil Science Academy. You can see. So what exactly IPCC's 6th assessment report is, why it is in news, we will discuss everything. First of all, remember IPCC's 6th assessment reports part 3 is recently released. So why it was in news? Because IPCC released the third part of the 6th assessment report titled Climate Change 2022 Mitigation of Climate Change. That is the name of the assessment report number 6 part 3 of IPCC, the working group 3 contribution to the 6th assessment report. Now from this slide, what you need to remember? You need to remember that IPCC is releasing 6th assessment report. That means before this IPCC released first, second, third, fourth and fifth assessment report. Now this is the 6th assessment report, and in that also it is part 3, and under part 3 the name of this report, part 3 report, is Climate Change 2022 Mitigation of Climate Change. That is IPCC's 6th assessment report part 3 from this slide. Then now you should know what exactly IPCC is. Basic or statics related to IPCC are very important and very crucial. Now what is the genesis of IPCC? Number one, it is an intergovernmental organization. So keyword intergovernmental, this word is very important and very crucial. Second, it was created in 1988. So you need to remember, even before 1992, the year when UNFCCC came into existence and the discussion about climate change started, even before that this intergovernmental panel on climate change was established in 1988. And who established this panel? So it was established by WMO, World Meteorological Organization, and UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. So it is very important in which year IPCC was established and by whom it was established. These 2 points are very important for your UPSC preliminary examination. Then what is the objective of IPCC? It wants to provide governments at all levels with scientific information that they can use to develop climate policies. Simple format or simple objective of IPCC is to provide scientific information. To whom this information will be provided? This information will be provided to the governments. And what governments will do with this information? Governments will use this information so that they can come up with the climate policies, and by coming up with the climate policies they will deal with the climate change. Clear? That is the objective of IPCC. Then very important, IPCC is the UN body. It is part of the United Nations family. So IPCC is the UN body for assessing the science related to climate change. Not much important. Then India is member of IPCC, and India became member of IPCC in 1988, and there are total 196 members of IPCC. What else you should know about IPCC? Number one, it prepares assessment reports. Now, if I ask you, tell me how many assessment reports are prepared or released by IPCC till date. So, what will be your answer? Obviously, 5 reports are already released and sixth is on the way. Different parts of the sixth assessment reports are being released. So, it prepares assessment reports, it prepares spatial reports, and it also prepares methodology reports assessing the state of knowledge of climate change. So can I say, if someone wants a real scientific information about climate change, they need not to do anything else but go to the assessment reports of IPCC, and they will get each and every detailed information about the climate change. However, now this is very important line. Huh? Normally what happens ki when I say or when you hear that IPCC is involved in the providing scientific information to governments about climate change, we think कि maybe this scientific information is generated by IPCC. That is not possible. That is not happening. However, it does not itself engage in scientific research. Now, this is a very crucial information. See, scientists, or you can say climate scientists are involved in the scientific research. All the scientific research done by climate scientists is published. It is published by IPCC. And in which form it is published by IPCC? So it is published in the form of assessment report, it is published in the form of spatial reports, it is published in the form of methodology reports. Okay, and all these reports are used by government to come up with climate policies. It's that simple. So only role of IPCC in this case is to publish the scientific research or scientific information done by different NGOs, different scientists, different organizations that are involved in climate change research. IPCC only publishes them, and these publications of IPCC will be used by the government to come up with the climate policies. It's that simple. And for this reason, in 2007, IPCC was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it got the Nobel Prize for its work in the field of climate change. Now, I will give you short information about IPCC. Number one, IPCC, established in 1988, established by WMO and UNEP. This is first point. Second, IPCC is involved in the publication of, it is involved in the publication of scientific reports or scientific research related to climate change, and these publications are used by government. Now, who does scientific research? So NGOs, organizations, and different scientists, they are involved in the scientific research. Okay, then IPCC is UN body, United Nations part. It is part of the UN family. And last line, IPCC itself is not involved in scientific research. Clear? Is that clear? And IPCC, why IPCC is in news? Because of the sixth assessment report of the IPCC. We are going ahead. Then about the report, now what exactly this report says? Number one, this sixth assessment report part 3, which is headlined as Climate Change 2022 Mitigation of Climate Change. Okay, number one, it provides an updated global assessment of climate change mitigation progress and pledges and examines the sources of global emission. So this report, sixth report, number one, what it is doing? It is assessing ki what is the progress, how countries are progressing when it comes to mitigation of climate change. Number two, it also examines the sources from where exactly greenhouse gases are being emitted. So how countries are progressing when it comes to climate change mitigation, and from where exactly greenhouse gases are being emitted. These two things are being assessed or being examined by the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Other reports of ARC. Now see, I told you IPCC's sixth assessment report, part 3, right? Part 3. It means there must be part 1 and 2. So, report of working group 1, climate change 2021, the physical science basis. It was released in 2021. Then, report of working group 2, climate change 2022, impacts, adaptation and vulnerability, released in Feb 2022. And now, synthesis report, it is scheduled to be released in 2023, or you can simply say कि this report, mitigation of climate change 2022, mitigation of climate change, will be released in 2023. Now from this slide, nothing is important. You must have the fair idea about what exactly IPCC does. Okay. Now what are the mitigation targets for achieving climate goal as per IPCC AR6? Now see, there was a climate change conference. We call that Paris Agreement. Okay. And this Paris Agreement took place in 2014-15. And in this agreement, or in this conference, many countries placed some goals. We call them INDC or NDCs. Now, what is the meaning of NDC? Nationally determined contributions, or intentionally nationally determined contributions. Under NDCs, every country is submitting their own goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, or 70 years, or even 100 years. So these NDCs are being submitted to UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, by different countries. Now we are talking about them only. So mitigation targets for achieving climate goals as per IPCC AR6. Number one, what are the targets given by Paris Agreement? Number one, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, global GHG emissions peak before 2025 and reduced by 43% by 2030. So what exactly UNFCCC says? It says, number one, we should limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Number two, we should reduce emission of greenhouse gases by 43% by 2030, and we should, like every country in the world including world, should peak the emission of greenhouse gases by 2025, and after 20, what it means, after 2025 every country including globe, they should reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. It means every country in the world has the chance to increase their greenhouse gas emissions only till 2025. These are the targets. Okay. Then there is one more target: reach global net zero CO2 emissions in the early 2050s. Now what it means? Under this only, fourth target is we should achieve net zero emission of CO2. Okay, net zero CO2 emission by 2050. What it means, if you are today, what is happening, if we are absorbing 50 units of CO2, so we are releasing 100 units. So what is happening? Extra 50 units of CO2 are being added into the environment. Now this net zero CO2 emission by 2050, what it says, if you are emitting 50 units, you should absorb 50 units as well. So net emission of CO2 is zero. We call this net zero emission of CO2, and this net zero emission goal should be achieved by 2050. Now here I will tell you one fact. China promised that they will achieve net zero emission. Sorry, first European Union promised that they will achieve net zero emission by 2050. China promised that they will achieve net zero emission by 2060, and India promised that they will achieve net zero emission by 2070. But overall target says कि net zero emission should be achieved by 2050. Clear? Then methane reduced by 34% by 2030. So emission of methane should be reduced by 34% by 2030. Then though it says that global warming should be not be more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, but if countries are unable to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, so we need to at least hold the increase in global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius. To limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, global greenhouse gas emissions peak before 2025 reduced by 27% by 2030. Okay, then reach global net zero CO2 emissions around the early 2070. Now these are the actual goals. These are the actual goals. But if these goals are not achievable, then at least do this. At least do this. These goals are very important. Everyone should try to achieve these goals. Everyone should try to achieve these goals, but in case if you are unable to achieve these goals, at least do this, that limit temperature to 2 degrees Celsius, peak your GHG emissions by 2025, reduce emission of GHG by 27% by 2030, and achieve global net zero CO2 emission around 2070. These targets are very important and very crucial for your prelims 2023, and these targets are being suggested by the IPCC Assessment Report 6, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change AR 6. Clear? From first slide, now you know what is IPCC. From this slide, now you know what are the targets given by IPCC or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. These targets, you will come across these targets in many newspaper, in many articles. That's why remember these targets. Okay, we are going ahead. Now this report is published. Now what is the meaning of this report? If this report is published, it means this report should contain some information. Now, so what is the information? So what are the key findings and observations of this report? Number one, emission trends. 2010 to 2019 total net anthropogenic GHG emissions continued to rise. What it means? Ki there is a continuous rise in the emission of greenhouse gases, and our targets are saying you can increase the emission of greenhouse gases by up to 2025. Beyond 2025 you need to reduce those emissions. But last 19 years or 10 years record says there is a continuous emission of greenhouse gases by humans. Then 1850 to present, cumulative net CO2 emission rose. So along with greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 carbon dioxide emissions also rose. Net anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions increased since 2010 across all major sectors globally. Okay, there is no sector in the world, manufacturing sector, service sector, agriculture, animal husbandry, tourism, recreation, travel, air traffic, everything, in every sector emission of greenhouse gases caused by human activity has increased. Then annual average greenhouse gas emissions during 2010 to 19 higher than any previous decade, means from 2010 to 2019, in these 10 years, highest amount of greenhouse gases has been emitted compared to any other decade in the previous or in the past. Rate of growth between 2010 and 2019 lower than previous decades. One positive thing is there though, Amount of greenhouse gases emitted during 2010 to 19 is very high, but the overall percentage increase in the greenhouse gas emission compared to last year in this decade is bit lesser. Clear? Now see, you need not to remember the findings. Just try to create a pattern of trends of the emission of CO2 or greenhouse gases. Clear? Variation in regional contributions to global greenhouse gas emissions. What are the regional variations? Which country, which continent, which geographical region is emitting more greenhouse gases and which is emitting lesser greenhouse gases? So at least 18 countries sustain GHG emissions reduction for longer than 10 years. It means 18 countries in the world, they are continuously reducing emission of CO2. It is continuous. Second point, least developed countries, that is LDC, and small island developing state, that is SIDS, have much lower per capita emission than the global average, excluding CO2 emitted from land use change and forestry. You will come across this LUCF in our climate change discussion. If you studied about climate change in static part now, so in that you will come across this concept. So now what it means, I will explain you. See the population, I am giving you example. Suppose population of USA is 100% and population of India is 500. Now if USA is emitting 100 units of CO2, okay, what USA is doing? USA is emitting 100 units of CO2 and India is also emitting 100 units of CO2. Now what observers will say, USA and India are emitting same amount of CO2. That is true when it comes to number, but if you compare emission of CO2 by USA to their population, 100 people, so one person is emitting 1 unit in case of USA, but in this case 5 persons are emitting 1 unit. So see, if 5 persons are emitting 1 unit in case of India and in case of USA, one person is emitting 1 unit. So who is emitting more? Per capita emission is more is of USA. In that way, LDC and SIDS have much lower per capita emissions than global average, excluding CO2 emitted from land use change and forestry. 10% of households with the highest per capita emissions contribute a disproportionately large share of global household GHG emissions. So even 10% of the those people who are rich now, they are emitting more CO2. Those countries which are rich now, they are emitting more CO2, and poor country and poor people are emitting less CO2. That is what this report is saying. Okay. Now if we go ahead with current policies, now see what is our target. We want to limit the global increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100, and if it is not possible, at least we must do this, that we should limit the average increase in global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. But if we go ahead with current policies, the way different countries and different sectors are emitting CO2 today, it is possible that the average temperature of the world will increase by 3.2 degrees Celsius by 2100, and it is devastating. It is going to create a really big problem. Okay, it is really devastating. So projection of median global warming of 3.2 degrees Celsius by 2100 without a strengthening of policies. So it is very important, we need to change our policies, we need to strengthen our policies so that we can limit the increase in global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degree Celsius. Then see, if you want to reduce the emission of CO2, you need to fund, you need to give money, and if you don't give money, then there is a problem. So financial flows are 3 to 6 times lower than levels needed by 2030 to limit warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius. So from this slide, now you know two facts. Number one, we need to change policies. And number two, we need to provide finance. And why we should do this? Because we want to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius or at least 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. And if we do not do these things, then what will happen? Global temperature will rise by 3.2 degrees Celsius by 2100. These are the findings of this IPCC's 6th assessment report, part 3. Now, one fact is very important. I will show you through our internet. We are continuously using the term greenhouse gases, greenhouse gases, greenhouse gases, right? So you should know which all gases are considered as greenhouse gases. Are the greenhouse gases. We will check out all the greenhouse gases if possible. This image, I guess we can get better. Okay. Greenhouse gases list. These are the greenhouse gases. Here you can see carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide and fluorinated gases. Here they give you only 4 names, right? Only 4 names are given, but there are many more greenhouse gases. I will show you. Just give me a second. So it is important for you to remember the names of these greenhouse gases. It is very important and very crucial that you know the names of greenhouse gases. So here from this image you can see, if I enlarge this image, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbon and sulfur hexafluoride. These are the greenhouse gases. I will add this image into our PPT so that you can easily remember these names. It is very important in your prelims. They can ask you which of the following is a greenhouse gas. One by one I am going to explain you. First you need to remember the names of the greenhouse gases. These are the main greenhouse gases. There are many more, but these are the main greenhouse gases. So if these are the main greenhouse gases, now from this slide I will explain you one very important concept of the climate change discussion, and that concept is known as global warming potential, GWP. Okay, global warming potential. Now here if you observe, suppose you have 100 units of CO2 and they can warm the climate by 1 degree Celsius. Okay, now you have 10 units of methane. It also can warm the climate or uh, weather by 1 degree Celsius. Now who is more potent greenhouse gas? Methane. Because to increase temperature of the atmosphere by 1 degree Celsius, you need 10 units of methane. But to do same, you need 100 units of CO2. So it is said that methane is more powerful than CO2 when it comes to global warming. We call that global warming potential. Then why we blame CO2 only? Because all other gases are mostly released by natural processes, but CO2 is mainly released by anthropogenic activity, that is because of human activity. That's why we blame CO2, otherwise there is no reason to blame CO2. Clear? So I hope you got it. Now to compare global warming potential of different uh, greenhouse gases, what we do, we compare their global warming potential with carbon dioxide or CO2. So what we did, key CO2, the global warming potential of CO2 is 1, it is considered as 1, and average duration for which CO2 remains in the atmosphere is 50 to 200 years. If you release CO2 into the atmosphere, so that CO2 remains in the atmosphere for 50 to 200 years. Okay, excuse me. And the global warming potential of CO2 is 1. But if you release methane in atmosphere, it will remain in the atmosphere for 12 to 17 years, but it is 21 times more potent than CO2. So if anyone, or if in your exam they ask you which of the following greenhouse gas has more global warming potential, so every greenhouse gas has more global warming potential than CO2. Every greenhouse gas is more potent than CO2 when it comes to global warming potential. For example, methane is 21 times more potent, nitrous oxide is 310 times more potent, chlorofluorocarbons are 125 to 152 times more potent, HCFCs are 125 times more potent, perfluorocarbons are 6500 times more potent, and sulfur hexafluoride is 23,900 times more potent. Clear? So now most of the gases, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are carbon dioxide and methane and water vapor. But water vapor is not released by anthropogenic activities or human. That's why we do not consider it. Otherwise, water vapor is also a greenhouse gas. So here methane emission, why in news? Recently, Global Methane Assessment 2030 baseline report was released by Climate and Clean Air Coalition CCAC and UNEP. Now see, assessment report is released by, who releases assessment report? IPCC. And Global Methane Assessment, Global Methane Assessment, it is released by CCAC and UNEP. IPCC has nothing to do with the Global Methane Assessment Report. Remember this for your prelims, very important. In your prelims, they can directly ask you, Global Methane Assessment 2030 baseline report is released by CCAC and UNEP. Clear? Before we go to the methane emission, I will, in short, I will tell you this IPCC 6th Assessment Report Part 3 released by IPCC. What is IPCC? It came into existence in 1988, established by WMO and UNEP. Its objective is to provide scientific information to the government so that government can come up with the climate policies. Then total member 196, India is member since 1988. IPCC is UN body, and IPCC itself is not engaged in any scientific research, and IPCC got Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. Second, you need to remember is that there are different targets for climate change. Targets are 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. That is the temperature target, right? We will increase temperature by this much. Then we should or you can say like temperature increase 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. Then CO2 emission, net zero CO2 emission by 2050, reduction of methane by 34% by 2030, and reduction of greenhouse gases 43% by 2030. Okay, if you want to achieve this, if you want to achieve this 2 degrees Celsius by 2100, in that case net zero emission of CO2 by 2070, reduction in the emission of greenhouse gases by 27% by 2030, and in both cases every country should peak the emission of greenhouse gases by 2025. These are the basic emission targets or climate targets given by different organizations, including IPCC Assessment Report 6. Clear? These targets are very important. These targets will come again and again. You need not to worry. I will keep explaining them to you. Then key findings are not much important. This is also not much important. It is only for your trends. Then you know if you want to achieve target, you need to change your policies and increase finance to the climate change. And names of the greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, CFC, HCFC, perfluorocarbon, sulfur hexafluoride, and even water vapor. These are the main greenhouse gases. Now if methane is more potent than carbon dioxide, then methane emission. So to deal with the methane emission, there is one report we call that Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report, published by CCAC and UNEP. We will just go to the website of CCAC. It is important. It always comes in news. So we will check out what is climate change, climate and clean air coalition. We will just visit the website, climate and clean air coalition. You know, the key to remember about climate and clean air coalition is that it also deals with the short lived pollutants. Okay, it is very important. Whenever there is the term short lived pollutant, see, lived climate pollutant, it means they are talking about climate and clean air coalition for your prelims. Okay, climate and clean air coalition is mainly dealing with the short lived climate pollutant, or it is mainly dealing with the reduction of the short lived climate pollutants. Okay, let's go back. So methane, Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report, it was released by Climate and Clean Air Coalition, CCAC, and UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. Now what is methane? Just a minute, it is April and I am taking class from a semi-arid region without AC, with a fan on too. So yes, my body is trying to naturally cool down. Sweating is a body's way to keep the temperature of body lower. Okay, yes. So what are the characteristics of methane? They are also very important for your preliminary examination. Very important for your prelims. The first character of methane is it is colorless, it is odorless, and when you burn methane, like biogas, the main component of biogas is methane. Main component of natural gas is methane. Like main component of LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, is not methane, it is butane and propane. Okay. Now these small facts are all very important. They are also very important. Biogas contains methane, natural gas contains methane, liquefied petroleum gas contains butane and propane. So methane is colorless, odorless, and when you burn methane, it burns with the blue flame. Methane burns with the blue flame. Okay. Primary component of the natural gas, I told you, it is one of the most powerful greenhouse gas because the lifespan in atmosphere is 20 years, fewer than CO2. I showed you, na, CO2 remains in the atmosphere for 50 to 200 years, and methane remains in the atmosphere for 12 to 17 years, but methane is 21 times more potent than CO2 when it comes to global warming. Then global warming potential, it is more than 80 times greater than that of CO2, or you need to just remember methane is more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. Just remember this. Okay, somewhere you will find it is 21 times more potent. Here they are saying 80 times, but according to me, methane is 21 times more potent than CO2 when it comes to greenhouse global warming potential. It is responsible for more than 25% of global warming, and we keep blaming carbon only, or we keep blaming carbon dioxide. But nah, babu, nah. Carbon dioxide is responsible, after carbon dioxide, more greenhouse gas which is responsible for more global warming is methane. More than 25% of global warming is caused by methane. Then one half of the growth in tropospheric ozone formation. Then India among the top 5 methane emitters in the world. From this slide, what you need to remember: uh, characteristics: colorless, odorless, primary component of natural gas, primary component of biogas. Then lifespan is 20 years and more potent than CO2. That's it. Nothing more. Then also remember one more thing: after CO2, most of the global warming is caused by methane, and India is one of the top emitter of methane. Now from where exactly this methane is emitted? Remember, there is one group of bacteria, we call them anaerobic bacteria. These are anaerobic bacteria, means they can survive in conditions where there is no oxygen. And there are many types of anaerobic bacteria. One of them is methanogen. Their name is methanogen because these bacteria decompose decompose dead organic matter. These bacteria decompose dead organic matter, and this dead organic matter that is decomposed by bacteria leads to the release of methane. That's why we call them methanogen. Okay, and these methanogens live in marshy areas or wetlands. That's why if these methanogens are living in marshy areas or wetlands, so can I say कि marshy areas and wetlands will emit methane? Obviously. That's why methane is also known as marsh gas. We also call methane marsh gas. So here you can see, if there are 100 units of methane that are emitted every year, 30 units are emitted only by wetland, and in wetland, who is responsible for formation of methane? Methanogens. These methanogens are also present in the gut region of ruminants, that is cows, buffaloes, deer and all. So methane is also emitted by the livestock. Here you go. 14%, wetland 30%. Okay, fossil fuel, when you burn fossil fuel, 17% methane is emitted from fossil fuel. So you can see highest amount of methane is emitted by wetland, that is 30. Then comes fossil fuel, that is 17, and then comes livestock, that is 14. So if you join all these, so it is 50% or more than 50%. Now 10 plus 10, 20 plus 30, 50 plus 11, 61% methane is coming from wetland, fossil fuel and livestock. Okay, that's why, because of this livestock, now India is one of the top emitter of methane. Now wetland, there is one interesting fact: wet paddy cultivation. Wet paddy field is a type of wetland. So wet paddy cultivation is also responsible for emission of methane. That's why India is one of the top emitter of methane, because of the livestock and because of the wet paddy cultivation. Then termites, they also release methane. Ocean also release methane. Other biogenic products, rice fields. See, spatial, there is a rice. So here top is wetland, then fossil fuel, then livestock, and then rice field or rice production across the world. These are the top four sources of the methane. Clear? Then waste practices, that is waste management and all, biomass burning and all. So these are the different sources of methane, and methane is a potent global warming greenhouse gas. Next, more on news. Report was launched at Climate and Clean Air Ministerial meeting at 27th Conference of Parties to UNFCCC. Okay, not much important. This report examines baseline projections of methane emissions over the coming decade and implications of global methane pledge target. Now for us, global methane pledge is also important. GMP is also important for our examination. Okay, what are the key findings of this report? Amount of methane in the atmosphere is 260% of pre-industrial rivers, that is before 1700 the methane concentration was 1 unit, and now today in 2023 it is 260 unit. So there is a 260% increase in the emission or concentration of methane in the atmosphere compared to pre-industrial levels. Then human driven methane emissions are responsible for nearly 45% of current net warming. So remember, why there is an increase in the concentration of methane from 1 unit to 260 unit? Because of the anthropogenic activity, because of the human activities. And 2021 saw the largest annual increase recorded since since we started recording the emission of methane. In 2021, highest amount of methane is released in a single year. These are the findings of which report? This report, Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report, that was released by Climate and Clean Air Coalition and United Nations Environment Program. Clear? Now related news. Global Methane Pledge. Recently Australia joined Global Methane Pledge. Now very important, Global Methane Pledge, see, launched at COP26 in 2021 to catalyze action to reduce methane emission. Very important. GMP was launched in 2021, means it is only 2 years old. Global Methane Pledge is only 2 years old. Launched at COP27 in 2021 to catalyze action to reduce methane emissions. It is led by USA and European Union. Now you know why USA and European Union are leading the methane emission, because methane is mainly emitted by wetlands, methane is mainly emitted by livestock, methane is mainly emitted by rice, and these two things are more common in tropical countries. Even wetlands are more common in tropical countries. USA is not a tropical country. All European countries are temperate countries. They are also not part of the tropical country. That's why they are focusing more on methane. If you focus more on CO2, they are emitting more CO2. Okay. So this is how every country is taking benefit of the science for themselves. Okay. Now, Global Methane Pledge came into existence in 2021, and the aim of this Global Methane Pledge is to collectively reduce methane emissions by at least 30% below 2020 levels by 2030. So, remember for your prelims, very important, targets are very crucial. Huh? What is Global Methane Pledge? It came into existence in 2021 and it want to reduce methane emission by 30% by 2030. But 30% of what? 30% of the, in 2020, if there are 100 units of methane, so by 2030 we want to reduce the concentration of methane in atmosphere by 30%, that is to make it 70. That is Global Methane Pledge that came into existence in 2021. So aim is to collectively reduce methane emission by at least 30% below 2020 levels by 2030. Membership, more than 100 country participants, together responsible for 45% of global human caused methane emissions. They are members, means countries who emit 45% methane across the world, they are already members of the global methane pledge. India did not sign the pledge because of its concerns over the impact on trade, on the country's vast farm sector, and the role of livestock in the rural economy. So very, very important. Now I am going to make it short. Global methane pledge came into existence in 2021. Global methane pledge aims to reduce the emission of methane by 30% by 2030, and that too, that level should be, base year is 2020. And third, global methane pledge, global methane pledge is not signed by India, not signed by India. Clear? So this is about global methane pledge. Now you know about the methane, about the global methane pledge as well. Now we will discuss about global. As per GEM, just 30 fossil fuel companies account for nearly half of the planet warming methane emitted by the world's energy sector. Not much important. Now, Global Energy Monitor, it is a non-profit organization which aims to develop and share information in support of the worldwide movement for clean energy. Not much important. So this slide is not important. Now, this International Methane Emission Observatory, that is IMEO, it is important. First, what we discussed, we will just quickly revise things, and then we will go to the International Methane Emission Observatory. First, we discussed about methane emission. There is one report, Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report. Can anybody tell me the name of the organizations that released Global Methane Assessment Baseline Report? Which organization released Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report? I want answer in the comment, okay? Till that time, I am drinking water. आप तब तक आंसर दो. Okay, very good. I'm going to check comments, though this video will be uh, like uh, it will be released on YouTube in the form of recorded video, but I will be, whenever it will be streamed now, I will be watching this video and replying to your comments. Clear? So Global Methane Assessment 2030 Baseline Report. What are the characters of methane? Colorless, odorless, primary component of natural gas, primary component of your what we say, biogas, lifespan 20 years, more potent than CO2, 25% global warming is caused by methane, highest contributor to the methane emission is wetland, that's why we call methane marsh gas, and I told you all the history. Then global methane pledge, GMP, if we speak, India is not member, it came into existence in 2021 and it want to reduce emission of methane by 2030. Global Energy Monitor is not important. Now, International Methane Emission Observatory, IMEO. What exactly it is? IMEO. So according to a report by IMEO, cutting methane emission is fastest way to tackle climate change in short term. See, cutting emission of CO2 can also help us to deal with climate change, but if we cut emission of methane, that is more impactful, as global warming potential of methane is much more compared to CO2. Okay, so according to a report by IMEO, cutting methane emission is fastest way to tackle climate change in short term. It is an initiative by UNEP. See, IPCC, WMO and UNEP. Then that global methane assessment report, UNEP and Climate and Clean Air Coalition, CCAC, and now IMEO. It is established by UNEP. So every year you can see UNEP is there. United Nations Environment Program is there. What is the aim? So it is an initiative by UNEP launched in 2021 with support from European Commission. What is the aim? To catalyze reduction of methane emissions starting with fossil fuel sector. Core implementing partner are Global Methane Pledge. Now what we will do? we will just check out the small details, not much details, but in small detail. Just give me a second. Don't know where exactly we can find what is the duration of the video. It's not there. Fine. So we will just check out global methane pledge. It also came into existence in 2021. Important. Check it out. What it is saying: global methane pledge, fast action on methane to keep a 1.5 degree Celsius future within reach. About global methane pledge, it is a powerful but short-lived climate pollutant. Remember, that's why CCAC is involved in this. Methane is a powerful but short-lived climate pollutant that accounts for about half of the net rise in global average temperature since the pre-industrial era. Okay, so I guess I will come up with the global methane pledge short. In a short, I will explain you about global methane pledge in detail. Basics I already told you. Okay, so for today, that's it. I will come up with the all detailed information about climate change in next video. So today, that's it. In next class, we are going to discuss about ocean acidification and Arctic ice, as well as we will revise whatever we studied in this class about super emitters and all. So before you leave this class, you need to remember a few things. What are those things? We at IQCIVILS IAS Academy Guwahati, we are starting new batches from 10th April and 20 April. Both these batches for those students who are going to appear for 2024 prelims of UPSC as well as APSC or State Services Examination. If you want to book your seat, register yourself at IQCIVILS IAS Academy offline or online courses. So what you need to do, you need to simply call on these numbers and register yourself, and your seat will be booked. And once you get your seat at IQCIVILS IAS Academy, probability of you clearing UPSC or state services examination increases exponentially. So that's it from sayonara, see you soon. आज के लिए बस इतना ही काफ़ी. Thank you.